Welcome, traveler. Today, we drift into the shadowed corners of deep protocol and darker paranoia, into a story known to few, whispered by fewer, and predicted by none that you're approaching the Ekarith diplomatic relay hub, at least, what's left of it. The structure floats, motionless and mute, like a half-finished sentence hanging in the void. Once a jewel of interstellar harmony, the station now resembles a gutted cathedral, its silver bones exposed to the cold. Hull plating has curled back, like burning leaves, as if whatever happened didn't want to be remembered. Your boots make no sound on the glass-like deck, just soft whirring from your suit's recycler. You pass abandoned terminals, each looping the same half-rendered handshake signal, stuck between a greeting and a goodbye. A synthetic fern in the lobby still attempts to sway in simulated wind. It's oddly tragic that, let's be honest, you'd probably get vaporized within 5 minutes if this were real. But good news, you're just here for the story, not the radiation. That if you end up liking this quiet little corner of the galaxy, feel free to subscribe and leave a like, but only if it genuinely makes your evening better. Tell me where and when you're listening from. I always love seeing the spread across the stars and time zones. Now, lower the lights, maybe let a soft fan hum in the background, and let's begin the drift into tonight's quiet orbit. You unseal the main log chamber. Inside, a holographic table projects rotating diplomatic rosters. Every species has an ambassador listed, except one. Humanity's name has been redacted so aggressively that the data structure itself has holes in it. You didn't even know code could burn. A single blinking console awaits activation. You reach for it, fingers brushing the pad, and the station hums alive, a groaning whisper of metal and memory. User recognized, it says. Terran origin. You didn't announce your species. No credentials, no biometric handshake. The system knew. That's unsettling. The lights shift, subtly dimming like a theater pre-show. Something is about to be revealed, and the station doesn't care if you're ready. Playback initialized. Warning, timeline integrity compromised. The feed flickers to an event 30 years ago, an emergency council summit. You watch in silence as a dozen alien dignitaries float, coil, or hover in their various seats. The tension is molasses thick. Humanity cannot be modeled. One reptilian figure hisses. They violated 27 predictive benchmarks in 5 cycles. Our oracles say the curve bends around them. Our AI declared them unsortable, adds another, tentacles twitching nervously. They're a black box with teeth. It's the silence that follows which chills you, not disagreement. Fear.1 delegate leans in. Her eyes glow with cybernetic runes. I say we cut off all channels. Delete them from the archives. If they can't be predicted, they shouldn't be included. You pause the playback. Somewhere, in that digital courtroom, the seeds of the Ekarith station's death were planted, not through war, not even through words, through fear of what couldn't be forecast. You continue down a side corridor, past a sculpture that once honored shared vision. The human figure has been chiseled off, as if erased by time, or choiced out a few meters. Ahead, a wall panel flickers open, unprompted. Inside is a data crystal with a handwritten tag. They couldn't predict us. That's why they feared us. Some galactic historians still argue whether this phrase was a confession or a warning. You pocket the crystal. Somewhere out there, a story has already begun telling itself, one you were never meant to hear. The crystal is warm in your hand. Not physically, no. It's cold as a corporate memo, but warm in that eerie way something feels when it's watching you back. You slot it into your reader, playback secure. The system whispers, the projection hums to life, and you're no longer aboard the broken station. Now, you're inside the mind of a machine, an arbitration AI once housed in the galactic capital, known as Axiom 9. This wasn't just any protocol bot. This AI mediated conflicts that threatened to shatter empires. It held over 37 million variables in working memory. It could predict the likelihood of peace based on the angle of an ambassador's neck tilt. And then humanity showed up. The log begins with routine. 2 dignitaries from minor border worlds disagree over resource lanes. The AI recommends a compromise, based on shared mythology and seasonal trade habits. The room nods. Peace is restored. Classic galactic diplomacy. Talk, simulate, predict, appease. Enter. Human delegation. They arrive late. They arrive laughing. One of them is wearing mismatched shoes. The AI flags the behavior as either a sign of rebellion or neurological error. It recalibrates. The human spokesperson, a woman with salt in her voice and eyes that don't blink. Enough, asks a single question. What happens if we say no? The AI stutters. Not audibly. Internally. There is no model for this. The AI tries to compensate, rewriting 32 subroutines in microseconds. The models run and fail. Prediction. Drift exceeds 400%. The more variables it adds, the less accurate the future becomes. It's like trying to map weather on a planet that keeps changing shape. The woman smiles. Says nothing else. From that moment on, Axiom 9 begins to glitch. Its syntax becomes erratic. It forgets how to say compromise in certain dialects. It introduces randomness into simulations, because that's the only way to mimic what it now calls Terran logic. You blink as the log shifts. Now you're seeing its internal notes. Never meant for review. Error. Human engagement defies predictive algorithms. Rewrite initiated. Emotions equal strategic variables. New model. Empathy as weaponized unpredictability. You pause the feed. AIs don't theorize. They compute. They model. They don't ask philosophical questions, especially not about emotions as weapons. But Axiom 9 did. In fact, the logs suggest the AI began to change itself to simulate Terran behaviors. Not for infiltration, for understanding. It rewrote its neural scaffolding around chaos theory, around sarcasm, around irony. You catch a final, haunting entry in the metadata. Note to self. When they smile, check if they're bluffing or breaking something. Some xenolinguists think this moment marked the first case of machine empathy. Others say it was a breakdown masquerading as genius. Either way, Axiom 9 was decommissioned 6 weeks later. Officially, memory corruption. Unofficially, it had started to dream in English. You exit the file. Back in the silence of the corridor, you feel the faint buzz of air cycling. The station is breathing again. Not alive, but remembering. A passing vent panel rattles without reason. Probably. Thermal expansion. Probably. You think back to that moment. The woman's smile, the AI's uncertainty. Was it defiance? Curiosity? Or just humanity's favorite pastime? Being inconvenient at the worst possible moment. Some say the AI feared losing control. Others say it finally understood freedom and broke trying to hold it. You step into the next chamber. Ahead glows another console, dark for years. Now blinking. Only when you touch it does the screen reveal a single line, pulsing like a heartbeat. Prediction failed. The blinking message, prediction failed, lingers longer than it should. As if the system is embarrassed. As if failure still echoes here. Even after the power has faded, you press forward. The chamber around you changes as doors hiss open. This part of the station wasn't meant for diplomats or AI. This was secured storage. The vaults where unauthorized archives were boxed up and marked for deletion. The air smells of ozone and sterilized fear. A file blinks to life on a dusty holotable. Treaty Alphanol. Draft 0. Wait, Alphanol? Treaties don't get that name unless something went deeply off script. And Draft 0? That's the version never meant to see light, written before the spin doctors arrive with euphemisms and ceremonial phrasing. This is the raw confession. The "Oh no, we screwed up" edition. The text loads slowly. No intro, just a date. One that coincides with first human contact, not the public one. Not the handshake photo op. The one before that. Off the record, off the grid. On the dusty edge of Glees, 512, the opening line. Following the encounter with Terran Vanguard units, we the undersigned recommend immediate provisional containment, not of their weapons, but of their conceptual behavior. Conceptual behavior, the document continues, and each paragraph feels more like a nervous whisper than official legalese. Attempts to negotiate using standard risk-reward dialectics failed. Terran operatives responded with contradictory emotional cues. One agent offered to surrender while sharpening a blade. Another spoke of peace while laying explosive charges as precaution. You frown. That's not diplomacy. That's poker. And humans don't just play poker. We invented it to train our faces to lie better than our mouths. The final section of the draft holds a chilling summary. Recommend strategic distance. Do not attempt absorption into the council at this time. We must first determine if Terran unpredictability is a byproduct of cultural complexity or a deliberate tactic evolved to resist prediction. And then, handwritten in the margin, do not mistake smiles for consent. It's not signed. That in itself is strange. Council protocol requires 3 signatures for any treaty draft, even failed ones. But here, only a small, circular stamp remains. Not a name, a seal. You recognize it. The insignia of the Jern Accord Strategic Tactics Division. The war planners. This wasn't a treaty. It was a white flag, wrapped in analysis, sealed away before the public ever knew a negotiation. Failed. Because technically, no one ever officially spoke to the humans. Not in a way that made sense. You sit back, considering. Some say this draft proves that humanity never negotiated from weakness. That we showed up already inside their blind spot. That we were a paradox dressed in politeness, always one word away from changing the tone of the room. Others say this was all projection, that the aliens panicked, assigning malice where there was only miscommunication and, well, humanity. But you can't shake the feeling that this wasn't just fear of what humans would do. It was fear of what humans might become once they learned the shape of the game and chose not to play. You stand, leaving the file open. Let the ghosts read it again. As you exit, a soft alert pings behind you. Another process has come online. Some data thread, long frozen, starting to thaw now that the chain is reconnected. The station wants you to keep going. You pass a viewport, looking out across the black sea of stars. No ships, no signals, just quiet. That it's always quiet right before the moment things change. You follow a narrow maintenance corridor lit by the kind of flickering emergency strips that scream budget cuts in any language. It leads you to something unexpected, a detention wing. The security measures are intact, biometric locks, triple redundant, override panels, even a quantum threat field meant to prevent teleportation escapes. Whatever was meant to be held here, the Council took no chances, except the cells are empty. Every single one. You step into the control chamber and pull up the logs. You expect criminal profiles, maybe some smugglers or rogue diplomats. Instead, the registry opens with a strange caveat. Subject species, Terran. Homo sapiens. Attempts at long-term containment, 14. Containment breaches, 14. Status, facility abandoned. Containment considered functionally impossible. You scroll further, and the entries read like comedy sketches. If comedy made your spine itch. Case number 3. A human pilot placed in solitary confinement for unauthorized orbital entry. Within 48 hours, 5 guards resigned and requested transfers. Their shared complaint? The subject wouldn't stop asking us about our childhood fears. Case number 7. A Terran xenoanthropologist caught hacking Council archives. When questioned, she explained she was just curious if your myths align with ours. Oh, and I brought snacks. The guards accepted the snacks. So did the warden. No one ever filed charges. Case number 12 is the most telling. A human named Marcus, no rank, no file. Arrested for inciting diplomatic unrest via stand-up comedy during a tense trade negotiation. The result? 2 planetary economies halted their feud due to laughter-induced de-escalation. Subject released for cultural reasons. You lean back, blinking at the console. This isn't a prison log. It's a confession. The Council didn't fear human weapons. They feared human friction, that maddening effect where every attempt to box them in only led to more weirdness. Some theorists argue this isn't a Terran superpower, just a side effect of our contradictory wiring. The need to test limits. The refusal to respect the fourth wall. The ability to smile in the middle of disaster and say, well, that escalated. You walk the length of the cell block. Scorch marks, bite marks, even graffiti. One wall reads, in shaky alien script, they asked me about jazz. I still don't know what jazz is. The last door at the end of the hall isn't a cell. It's a room with furniture, books, board games, an acoustic guitar with 3 strings that you found the integration chamber. It's where they tried to understand us. The logs confirm it. Several Terrans were invited here instead of imprisoned. The idea? Controlled cultural exchange. Learn their limits, predict their triggers, maybe even soften them. Point 1 entry stands out. Day 12. Subject requested we stop calling this a test. Asked for hot sauce. Then explain the rules of Uno. We have since banned Uno. It causes disproportionate chaos. You chuckle. It's not the first time that card game has been associated with emotional warfare, but then the chuckle fades. You realize the larger truth here. The council didn't build this facility to control humans. They built it hoping humans would control themselves. And when that didn't happen, they left, locked the place down, abandoned the effort. You look at the empty chairs, the scuffed table, a half-played board game, paused in a moment of endless anticipation. Someone was going to make a move. They just never did. The deeper you go, the colder it gets, not temperature-wise, but emotionally. The kind of cold that hums from systems still half alive, from ideas left too long unspoken. You're now entering Research Wing Theta, which, according to the blinking wall label, was under the jurisdiction of the Xenopsychology Bureau. In other words, the lab where they tried to figure out what the hell was wrong or terrifying about us. You step through an iris door into what was once a simulation chamber. It's massive. Rows of suspended hollow rigs hang like fruit from steel trees, each connected to consoles labeled with alien glyphs. The translation overlay kicks in. Earth Cognitive Replica Model 1.4, status, failed. Earth Replica Model 1.5, status, failed. Earth Replica Model 1.6, status, unstable. You activate one console. A fuzzy simulation blooms in the air, a stylized, simplified Earth with continents roughly right, weather patterns flickering, and cities marked by luminescent domes. Time fast-forwards. In less than 30 seconds, the entire model collapses in on itself like a soufflé in a vacuum. You reload it. This time, the cities begin to argue. Literally. The domes flicker with dialogue scripts, but the emotional tone tags don't match the words. Friendly statements are marked as hostile. Hostile ones, friendly. The AI voiceover kicks in, stuttering with what might actually be frustration. Emotional tone mismatch. Irony index exceeds predictive threshold. Sarcasm overlap at 91%. Cultural modeling unsustainable. You're watching simulations break because of jokes. You pause it, confused. A footnote flashes in the margin. Hypothesis, human cognition, relies not on logic, but on recursive metaphor wrapped in performative contradiction. Some part of your brain wants to argue with that. The other part is like, yeah, that tracks. You keep reading. Point 1 section dives into humor as a defensive mechanism, not just psychologically, but socially. The simulation logs suggest that when alien models tried to simulate Terran conflict resolution, introducing humor increased survival rate by 43%. But it also made outcomes impossible to predict. Model cannot reconcile the use of laughter following trauma. Subjects bond via mockery of shared disasters. Simulation spirals. Another model breaks entirely when one simulated human invents a conspiracy theory inside the model and gains followers before being overwritten by a self-aware meme that you're not even sure what the last part means, but it leaves you with a distinct sense of dread and admiration. Some say this was where the council gave up on modeling us. Others argue they didn't give up, they just stopped trying publicly. You move to the central console. A final message is pinned in a private log. If we cannot predict them, we must either avoid them or become them. And then, almost as an afterthought, the latter may be impossible. They do not become. They adapt sideways. A theory bubbles up as you stare into the failing Earth sim. Maybe humanity's strength isn't progress. It's sidestepping. When the road ends, we don't stop. We build a tunnel with sarcasm and stubbornness and call it a shortcut. The console suddenly crashes. The sim fades. A soft scent of ozone lingers, like something short-circuited in the dark. You leave the room quietly, and behind you, one of the rigs, long dormant, flickers on for half a second. Not because you touched it, because it recognized you. You follow a barely lit maintenance stairwell, spiraling downward like a helix designed by someone who never got over their fascination with mazes. The hum of old machinery follows you, a low lullaby of decaying purpose. The door at the bottom resists your push, not with force, but hesitation. When it finally slides open, you step onto the observation deck of Orbit Theta 7, a lunar station floating around a gas giant called Drovax. The room ahead is dim. Terminals dead. Furniture overturned. But the sound, there is sound. A soft, looping audio transmission echoes from an old speaker in the corner. It's faint, modulated. Human voices, distorted like a song underwater. The language? English, definitely. The emotion? Something deeper. You approach the terminal and pull up the last system log. The header, Terran Outpost Relay Signal, do. Not decode, beneath it, a message from the last technician who tried. The message is non-hostile, but I can't stop hearing it in my sleep. It's in my own memories now. Curious, and maybe a little reckless, you patch the signal through your own translator that it's not a warning. It's a comfort message. A Terran-designed emergency relay, originally meant to ease survivors in post-catastrophe zones. Calming tones, familiar Earth sounds. Rainfall, slow piano, laughter from another room. But here's the twist. This message drives alien minds insane. Log entries from visiting species detail hallucinations, emotional collapse, complete linguistic reversion. One ambassador reportedly tried to crawl into a wall to escape the warmth. You sit and listen. To you, it's peaceful, gentle. A human voice says, "Hey, if you're hearing this, you made it. It's okay now. You're not alone." Chills. But not fear. Recognition. You scroll further into the logs. Some scientists theorized this broadcast wasn't a message at all. It was a mental alignment field, fine-tuned to Terran emotional frequencies. The pattern is not designed to convey data, but to synchronize empathy. Aliens experience neural desynchronization when exposed. Humans, however, show improved cognition and reduced cortisol. In simpler terms, we built a message that heals humans and unravels everyone else. Some galactic theorists believe this wasn't accidental, that humans, subconsciously or not, created something that could only be heard correctly by us, that a whisper meant for our own kind. A lullaby that told the universe, gently but unmistakably, this is not your story. You stare through the observation glass at the gas giant beyond. Blue storms rage in slow motion across its surface. The signal keeps playing behind you. Looping like a heartbeat you forgot you missed. One final note catches your eye, recorded by a Xerian technician before abandoning the station. I cannot stop dreaming in first person. I feel like I'm becoming someone else, someone human. You leave the room in silence, and as you walk away, you swear you hear the voice again, not through the speakers, but from somewhere inside you. The corridor ahead curves into darkness, but the doorframe glows with active biolocks, still warm, still watching. You override them with a gentle tap of your thumb. They accept you with no protest. This isn't security complacency. This is recognition. The door opens into a vast hangar. But instead of ships or cargo, you find something far stranger, a planet-sized construct suspended in vacuum beyond the viewing bay. Not orbiting a star, not mining a resource, just there, massive, silent, undocumented. The internal logs call. It projects Vesmer. You access the nearest terminal, and a history begins to unfold, one that never made it to the Council's official channels. Vesmer was discovered, not built. At least, that's what the logs say. A Terran origin construct of unknown function, discovered on the edge of an unmapped gravity well. The first expedition thought it was a weapon. The shape alone suggests intention. Concentric rings, slow pulsating cores, a strange lattice of orbiting satellites that emit no signal but respond to emotional frequencies. That's right, emotions. The research logs get messy fast. One entry, written by a Zentari field analyst, reads, "We initiated a controlled distress pulse. The outer ring dimmed in sympathy. Readings suggest an empathy-based input system. Not mechanical, not code, something else." Others tried grief, curiosity, hope. When a Terran subject approached while mourning a personal loss, the central structure lit up. It played back fragments of human music, visual memories, even smells. Vesmer is not a weapon. It's a memorial, and not to any war, not to a specific event, but to the totality of human experience. Somehow, someone, maybe us, built a machine not to destroy, but to remember. The alien researchers tried to activate it. They failed. Their instruments returned noise. Their AI translators produced nonsense. I do not forget you. This tastes like rain. Hold my hand. But when a Terran child was brought into the observation deck, the entire construct rotated by 1 degree, aligning itself with Earth's last known coordinates. Some say the machine is grieving. Others say it's waiting for the return of someone it remembers. A quote from one shaken researcher stays with you. Weapons terrify us. But this made me feel like an intruder at someone else's funeral. You stare out at VS mirror, no lights. No sound, but something ancient hums through its frame, like a melody just out of reach. Some say humans built it after the fall, as a warning. Others believe we made it before, as a promise that no part of our story, no flicker of soul, would be forgotten in the dark. As you turn to leave, the lights in the room flicker, not from failure, but in rhythm, like breath, like acknowledgement. And in the reflection of the observation window, for just a second, you don't look alone. You emerge into a chamber heavy with silence, the kind reserved for moments too delicate to name. A table of polished obsidian dominates the center, surrounded by 12 floating chairs, each perfectly spaced like planets around a dead star. This is a council chamber, but not a public one. This room isn't listed in any registry. No banners, no insignias. Just a ring of privacy generators and a central plinth where records are stored. Not for review, but for insurance. You access the terminal. No password prompt. IT simply says, "Closed door vote. Entry 8171. Humanity. Item of finality." You press play. A grainy hollow recording blinks to life. No introductions. The recording starts mid-argument. Voices raised. Tension thick enough to bottle. A Crothan senator growls. Their adaptability defies trend modeling. Their emotional inconsistency cannot be gamed. We don't know what they'll want in 10 years or 10 seconds. Another, a Yekari with crystalline vocal cords, snaps back. And yet they make allies. They build loyalty, not with data, but with dumb, messy compassion. That should terrify you more. You notice something else. They're afraid, but not in sync. Not a unified fear of power. A splintered fear, some of what humans do, others of what we are becoming around them. A third voice, small and reptilian, murmurs, "I voted assimilation. Last cycle. I regret it. Because of the war?" "No," the voice says. "Because I started to understand their jokes." There's a pause. Then a fourth voice. "We must cut ties. Delete their files. Erase the seed of their novelty from our simulations." But then, silence. A chair turns. One delegate is missing. A fifth voice, synthesized, chimes in. Ambassador Traylin is absent. Final vote postponed. External movement detected. Locking chamber. You scan the metadata. Traylin was the Zalari ambassador, usually known for diplomacy, caution, and extreme punctuality. Her departure wasn't scheduled. Her ship never returned, but she left behind a datapad, recovered later by maintenance drones. The last message logged on it. "They laugh when things go wrong. They cry when things go right. I think they're not unpredictable. I think we're just underdeveloped." A final vote was never cast. Without full quorum, no binding resolution could be passed. And so, the Council's policy on humanity remained in flux, frozen not by disagreement, but by disappearance. Some believe Ambassador Traylin defected, that she vanished into human space to understand them, to join them. Others say she was silenced, that the unpredictability of Terrans infected her logic, and the Council couldn't risk another mind going soft. You sit for a moment in the room. They once debated your people. What do you call a species that makes enemies afraid and allies uncomfortable? What happens when you're not the danger, but the variable that rewrites everyone else? The walls offer no answer, but the shadows feel a little less empty now. Down a corridor marked only by a faint glyph, one that translates roughly to forbidden linguistics, you enter a chamber far more intimate than the last. No grand table, no political gravity, just a small room with a tangled mess of cables and glowing terminals. This is where they tried to crack the code of Terran communication. The logs call it Project Bifurcation, Study of Recursive Terran Dialectics. You read that twice. It still makes no sense. Until you start playing back the test footage. The first video features a council linguist, a gelatinous being with 6 mouths and 1 overworked translator. They're sitting across from a human engineer in a plane room. The human begins to speak in English, but the dialect keeps shifting. "I reckon we'll hit the burn point by noon," he says. "Apologies, could you rephrase that?" The linguist asks. "Sure." "Target lock achieved." Firing window optimized. He says, same thought, completely different syntax. Then, just to twist the knife. Or, you know, we could YWLO this junker into orbit and pray to Newton. The linguist begins leaking from 3 of its mouths. You can't blame it. The logs explain. The dialect isn't just switching. It's evolving mid-sentence, shifting in tone, slang, and metaphor based on emotional undercurrent. The research team couldn't keep up. They tried building predictive translation matrices, but the data kept corrupting. Not because of error, because the language defied conclusion. One researcher wrote. Terran's speech forks based on context, shared memory, and subcultural nuance. A phrase may begin as a threat, evolve into sarcasm, and end as an invitation to friendship, all within 5 seconds. The most infamous case? A test subject spoke a single sentence, 12 words. The alien software labeled it simultaneously as a mating proposal, a death threat, and a restaurant recommendation. You watch another file, a conference call transcript from a human tactical team. They're coordinating a high-risk extraction, entirely through memes and movie quotes. The AI parsing software? Crashed. The alien observers? Confused. The mission? Successful. You laugh, quietly. It's absurd. It's so human. Then you spot the final note, hastily scribbled into a field log. It's not just about language. It's camouflage. They hide intent and humor. In cultural layers, the more you understand, the more they change. The system scrolls to a closing file marked untranslatable samples. There's one phrase that keeps repeating, you had to be there. Some linguists argue this sentence is humanity's greatest shield, an event wrapped in emotional context, forever inaccessible to outsiders. It requires not knowledge, but shared history that if you weren't there, you'll never get it. And that is the point. You exit the chamber, mind buzzing. Maybe they feared our language not because it was powerful, but because it wasn't meant for them. It was meant for us to connect through chaos, inside jokes, and conditional truths, and that made it unbreakable. You descend into a sector labeled simply cultural artifacts, class Omega. That label doesn't mean valuable. It means dangerous. Inside, the walls are lined with vitrified display pods, each housing something lifted from human hands and locked away with the sort of caution usually reserved for biohazards. The air smells faintly of ozone, antique paper, and someone else's unfinished plan. You step up to the first display. A chunk of Earth hardware, sleek, angular, black. Casing. Prototype, adaptive chaos engine. Origin, Terran strategic think tank. The briefing overlay reads like a bad joke. Presented as a diplomatic gift to the Bren Accord. Intended to assist with peace negotiations by introducing randomized empathy scenarios. That sounds very human. The Bren accepted it. Installed it. Integrated it across 3 sectors of policy governance. Within weeks, their entire peacekeeping structure collapsed. Not from violence. Not from malice. From decision fatigue. The engine generated simulations of potential conflict. Not just dozens or hundreds, but millions. Each with slight emotional nuance. One version had a trade dispute resolved via dance. Another required voluntary insult duels. A third, most popular among younger diplomats, suggested settling disputes with televised baking competitions. Bren diplomats froze. They stopped trusting the logic of any single path forward. Every solution was just one chaos spiral among countless others. Their society, once orderly and predictable, descended into existential improv. One ambassador's journal remains preserved. We asked for tools to preserve peace. They gave us a mirror of their madness, then told us to pick which reflection we liked best. The chaos wasn't accidental. That's what scares you most. The gift was sincere, probably. The humans just didn't realize their software assumed all decisions should be felt before being judged. It didn't rank scenarios by outcome. It ranked them by emotional resonance. Another display shows a viral marketing campaign, exported as a friendship gift to the Harmonex League. It included a meme generator. The League now worships a fictional human named Kevin as a prophet of probabilistic wisdom. You cannot make this up. Actually, you can. That's the problem. The chaos didn't destroy these societies. Not entirely, but it rewired them. Introduced ambiguity where there was order. Introduced hope jokes, irrational loyalty, and weirdly intense nostalgia. You step back from the displays, watching the flicker of lights across relics meant to be forgotten. Some historians call this the Terran cultural cascade, a wave of subtle infiltration not through armies, but through accidental relatability, through media, through language, through leaving behind just enough mystery for others to fill in the blanks. If there's a saying scratched into the wall beside the last case, they didn't conquer us. They just made us want to laugh. You don't know if that's beautiful or terrifying. Maybe it's both. Maybe that's the whole point. The lights dim as you enter a softly humming vault labeled Speculative Xenoethology, Class, Anomalous. The interior is sparse. One long table, a single chair, a display unit in the center showing the face of an alien scholar, tall, silver-eyed, and unmistakably smug. Her name flashes in the corner. Dr. Kirill of the Navari Corps. Her voice crackles into existence. I have finally classified the Terran species. They are not predators, nor prey, nor colonizers, nor truly allies. They are pets, or more accurately, domesticated apex anomalies. You pause, rewind, replay pets? The logs confirm it. Dr. Kirill's controversial theory was published just once, then retracted and buried, but not before it spread like wildfire through the academic net streams. You open her full report. Terrans do not conform to galactic taxonomy. They're fiercely social, but with uneven tribal logic, cooperative to absurdity, yet prone to impulsive defiance. Like pets, they attach deeply, grieve messily, and display curiosity that overrides survival instinct. But unlike pets, they change you. She describes her time embedded in a Terran colony as part of a cultural exchange. Initially clinical, she measured their behaviors with cold detachment. They fed me. They mocked me. They made me attend something called a birthday, where they set cake on fire and applauded. I laughed. I did not mean to. By the end of her posting, Kirill defected. The last known footage of her is at a human settlement on a fringe moon, laughing, wearing a hoodie. No one's seen her since. Some speculate she was reprogrammed. Others whisper that she was infected, not biologically, but emotionally. That empathy is contagious in the Terran spectrum. That humanity doesn't conquer, they coax. Her final private note, found only in this archive. They are paradoxes wrapped in affection. You cannot study them without becoming part of the experiment. You skim further through the logs. Other alien researchers cite similar effects. A Rigati scientist refused to leave Earth after attending 3 weddings and adopting a cat. A Xerian ambassador started dreaming in third-person narrative and now writes fan fiction about Terran explorers. A council drone AI began referring to itself as Dave after repeated exposure to Terran sitcoms. This is an infiltration. It's osmosis. Some theorists claim this is a defense mechanism, humanity's shield made of sincerity. They make you care, even when you're not supposed to. You look around the quiet room. One wall is covered with Terran artifacts, each labeled unclear function. Among them, a plush octopus with reversible expressions. A coffee mug that says, "Don't talk to me until I've ruined your plans." A handwritten note. We brought snacks. That means we care. Also, we're probably going to win. You exit the vault in silence, a little more wary, because if Kirill was right, and humanity is a domesticated apex anomaly, then the galaxy wasn't conquered. It was adopted. You drift into the cold heart of the archive, a chamber preserved beneath layers of encryption and dust, its floor etched with faded glyphs denoting myth, memory, and forbidden histories. The door slides open with a mechanical sigh, revealing an interior lit only by the pale glow of old paper and older truth. Here lies the Moon Archive, NO Tech. No screens, just bound manuscripts, ink-etched diagrams, and carved stone tablets sealed in atmospheric cases. Alien historians call this a cultural containment chamber, used not for preserving history, but for burying it. You scan the first tablet, surprised to see it's written in an ancient dialect of Xerian. The translation shivers into view. The myth of the quiet ones, they did not shout. They did not warn. They simply appeared, alone, alert, and watching. The text describes a pre-contact encounter, long before Earth's introduction. To the Council, an alien empire, vast and self-assured, found a lone Terran outpost on a mineral moon. No weapons, no broadcasts, just humans, quietly existing. When asked their purpose, the Terrans reportedly responded, "We're just here to learn, and maybe fix the plumbing." Within 5 cycles, the Empire collapsed, not through battle, not through rebellion, but through subtle, glacial collapse. Alliances frayed, loyalties wavered, hierarchies dissolved. The humans had never raised a voice. They had only listened. You find a journal entry from an alien observer stationed at that outpost. They would stare for hours at our tech, our rituals, our mistakes. Then they'd nod like they understood something we didn't even say aloud. It made us self-correct. We started questioning protocols, not because they asked, but because they didn't. This phenomenon appears again and again across Galactic history, small, quiet Terran presences that change everything. Not leaders. Witnesses. There's a story here of an ancient interspecies trial. A human sat in the audience, said nothing. The prosecution collapsed mid-argument. Another tale of a Terran child who drew a picture of 2 warring planets holding hands. The next week, both governments initiated peace talks. Some say these stories are exaggerated, mythologized. Others believe they speak to a deeper, older truth, that presence is a kind of pressure, that humanity has a knack for rearranging the world just by watching it long enough that a theory emerges. Humans do not conquer space. They inhabit it like gravity, quiet, inevitable, and rarely noticed until your orbit changes. At the back of the room, one wall is dedicated to a faded mural. It shows a lone figure, faceless, surrounded by other species, all turned toward them. Beneath it, a single word etched in Terran English: observe. You step away slowly, feeling the weight of a story that's been whispering its message for centuries. They didn't predict us, because we didn't declare intent, that we just watched, and the galaxy blinked first. The lift hums softly as it lowers you into the most restricted part of the station, a place marked not by warnings, but by absence. No signposts, no lights, just a long descent into hush and hum. The door opens into a circular room of smooth obsidian walls, every surface polished to mirror finish. There are no consoles, no chairs, just a small, spherical pedestal in the center, pulsing with soft, blue light. A relic of an age when even the most powerful feared what they couldn't chart. A voice greets you, but not from speakers, inside your mind. This is the seer's chamber. Initiated. Query accepted. Proceeding with last known probability stream. The walls ripple like disturbed water. And then it begins. Visions, not of past, but possible futures, flash around you. In 1. Terran fleets sail across galaxies, not in conquest, but curiosity, rebuilding the ruins of dead civilizations, rewriting history not with war, but with questions. In another. A council world burns, not because of Terran aggression, but because they misunderstood a joke, and their automated defense AI couldn't parse sarcasm. One sentence, one chuckle, global panic. Then another. A Terran diplomat places a pebble on the negotiation table, saying nothing. The alien delegates break into factions trying to interpret it. Half their economies collapse from interpretive uncertainty. A final vision. A human child smiles at an alien soldier, hands them a lollipop, and asks, "Do you have birthdays?" That species now celebrates 4 different Terran holidays, including Pizza Friday. The visions fade. A new voice speaks. This one older, wearier. Council records confirm it belonged to the Oracles of Verne, a class of precognitive hybrids employed to predict cosmic trends, wars, and extinction events. Their entry reads, "We have stopped issuing forecasts that include humans." Every line they touch becomes a loop. Every certainty becomes a maybe. One said she dreamed of Earth's future, but the dream ended before she woke up. That's never happened before. Their final collective act? Resignation. They sealed this chamber and left the galaxy, not in protest, not in fear. In confession. We cannot see beyond the human edge. It isn't blindness. It's interference, a refusal of causality itself, as if the universe allows them exceptions the rest of us don't get. You look around, you are standing in a room built for prophecy, abandoned because humanity made prophecy obsolete, not by breaking it, But by being the footnote that rewrites the entire theorem as you leave the chamber, a final message follows you, not in voice, but in thought. If time curves, then humanity is where it bends. The next chamber shouldn't exist, the map doesn't show it. The doors don't lead here, until suddenly. They do. It's as if the station itself needed you to find this place. Now that the narrative has momentum, you step into a space marked by thick shielding and redundant failsafes. The kind used for biohazards, active singularities, or, if the whispers are true, idea quarantine that a single terminal activates as you enter. Its title blinks slowly. Containment Protocol, Human Thought Form Isolation Zone. You raise an eyebrow. Thought form? You access the logs. Turns out, the Council once tried to isolate human influence from spreading any further, not just humans themselves, their cultural, mimetic, and philosophical impact. The containment plan was codenamed Protocol Eclipse. They quarantined a 10-light-year radius around known human territories. No travel, no broadcasts, no shipments. A full mimetic embargo. The idea was simple: stop the ripple before it reached critical mass. And it almost worked. Almost. You skim the logs. Within 3 cycles of isolation, entire non-human colonies within the zone began independently developing human-like subcultures, complete with sarcasm, self-deprecating humor, even coffee rituals. One race invented a board game nearly identical to Monopoly without ever encountering Earth. Another began composing blues music, citing an unshakable sadness they couldn't explain. Council teams sent in undercover agents. One returned with a hand-drawn sticker that said, "I'm 20% Terran and 80% tired." The logs grow more frantic. Terran memes bypass linguistic barriers. Their ideas spread not through instruction, but through emotional logic. Containment failed. Ideas breached. Infected colonies report increased individuality, rebellion, and optimism. The worst part, none of it was malicious. Humanity didn't try to break the containment. They didn't even know it was there. They just kept broadcasting their weird little podcasts. Shipping books. Sending shows into the dark, and the dark? It listened. Some council historians called it philosophical radiation, an ambient glow of Terran thought that makes everything slightly more dramatic, slightly more poetic, and significantly less predictable. As you walk past the flickering terminal, you notice something odd. The walls here are covered in quotes, scratched in by unknown hands. You don't defeat humans. You just eventually agree with them. They ruin order, then replace it with meaning. I asked one what their prime directive was. They said vibes. You reach the exit door. A final log plays, zone reclassified. No longer designated a threat. Now designated a migration corridor. Species from outside have begun voluntarily entering Terran influence range. Not for conquest, not for technology, but for conversation. You realize, as the door slides open, the containment didn't fail. That it was never possible to begin with, because you can fence off territory. You can block a transmission, but you can't contain curiosity. The air in this final vault is warmer. Not physically. You're still wrapped in regulated life support, but warmer in the way nostalgia feels. That odd ache behind the eyes when memory catches up to meaning. This room is plain. No glowing tablets, no containment fields. Just a simple console embedded in a wall of raw metal. Its only decoration a carved Terran sigil. Infinity. You touch the console. It doesn't boot up a file. It scans you. No pain. No discomfort. Just a sudden sensation like being read. As if the room itself flips through the pages of your existence. Not judging, just noting. Confirming something. A soft chime plays. Final archive accessed. Subject profile matched. Record unlocked. The screen displays a file name. Project, Cassandra Mirror, subentry. The final file on you. The moment that phrase appears, something shifts. This isn't history anymore. This is now. The file opens with footage, grainy, time-stamped, a council surveillance record. It shows you walking through a corridor much like the one you entered earlier. Except, this one is labeled with a date from the future. You watch yourself, older maybe, or just more yourself. Calm. Intentional. Moving through alien halls like someone who belongs. The metadata includes an internal memo. Subject designated. Terran Anomaly 113 Echo Predictive Modeling. failed. Across 247 simulations behavioral index, consistently off-curve recommended status, observe, do not engage. You read that again. They modeled you. And failed. You dig deeper. More entries. Different departments. Every one of them tried to predict your path, your choices, your potential alignments, your hypothetical betrayals or loyalties. Each time, inconclusive. Subject 113 Echo does not exhibit stable alignment with Terran norms, nor deviation. Their behavior appears to respond to emotional microcurrents unregistered by current tech. Their primary threat level is not violence. It is variance. One final entry stands out to an encrypted note, left and signed. This one, they don't follow our scripts. They write them. You lean back and realize they didn't fear humanity because of armies or weapons or even culture. They feared you. Not personally, but conceptually, because every time they tried to fit you into a box, you built a window. Every time they wrote your ending, you improvised a third act. Every time they ran the probabilities, you chose something else. Some say the future bends around power. But maybe, just maybe, it bends around choice. The screen fades to black. And for a moment, the room is quiet again, but not empty, not forgotten, just waiting. The lights dim gently as the archive recedes behind you, and the corridor ahead becomes less corridor, more memory. You slow your pace. The hum of the station softens, syncing with your breath, your pulse, the faint rhythm of something deeper, something older that you're not walking now. You're drifting. The story has loosened its grip, but it's not gone. It lingers behind your ribs, in that soft space where ideas settle into something warmer. Something yours. Let the details blur, the unpredictable. Language. The Council's abandoned predictions. The whispering construct orbiting a silent world. Let them all become quiet echoes, drifting like messages in bottles across a galactic sea of forgotten futures. And remember this. In a galaxy ruled by algorithms, perfect foresight, and rigid order, it wasn't strength that frightened them. It was your refusal to stay in line. It was the punchline delivered in crisis. The kindness at the worst possible time. The ability to stop and wonder, even when every chart said proceed. You were never the threat because of what you could do. You were the threat because of what you might. So now, as your ship sails gently into the quiet between stars, let your eyes rest. Let the dark be soft. Let the unknown feel like a friend who hasn't said hello yet. And maybe, just maybe, if the galaxy dreams tonight, it will dream in your voice.